The bullet whistled past Ibrahim Traoré's ear, embedding itself deep into the mango tree behind him. He dropped his watering can instantly, water splashing across his favorite tomato plants as he dove behind the concrete garden wall. His heart hammered against his ribs. Someone had just tried to kill him in his own backyard. The garden that had been his peaceful retreat moments before now felt like a death trap. Every shadow could hide another gunman. Every rustling leaf might signal the next attack. Ibrahim pressed his back against the rough concrete, trying to control his breathing. The silence that followed was worse than the gunshot. Where was the shooter now? Were they moving closer? Were there more of them? He could hear his wife Fatima calling from inside the house. "Ibrahim, what was that noise?" He wanted to shout back, to warn her to stay inside and call for help. But speaking would give away his exact position. The shooter might still be watching, waiting for him to make that mistake. The president of Burkina Faso had faced many dangers since taking power, but this was different. This was personal. This was in the sanctuary of his own home, the one place where he should have been safe. A second shot rang out, this one hitting the wall just inches from his head. Concrete dust showered down on him. The shooter was still there, still hunting. Ibrahim realized with growing horror that whoever was trying to kill him knew exactly where he was hiding. They could see him somehow. Maybe they were using high-powered scopes. Maybe they had the garden under surveillance for weeks. His phone was in his pocket, but pulling it out would require movement. Any movement might be his last. The shooter seemed to have a clear view of his position and deadly accuracy. Another sound reached his ears. Footsteps. Someone was moving through the garden, getting closer. The soft crunch of leaves under boots told him the assassin wasn't content to shoot from a distance anymore. They were coming to finish the job up close. Ibrahim's mind raced. He had to move, but where? The garden wall extended only a few more feet in either direction. Beyond that was open ground, a killing field for any sniper worth their training. The footsteps stopped. Everything went quiet again. Too quiet. That's when Ibrahim heard the metallic click that made his blood run cold. Someone was reloading, and they were close enough that he could hear it clearly. Very close. Ibrahim knew he had seconds before the next attack. The silence stretched like a taut wire, ready to snap. He could feel eyes watching him, calculating the perfect angle for a kill shot. Without warning, a third gunshot shattered the afternoon air. But this bullet didn't come near Ibrahim. It came from behind him, from inside his house. Someone was shooting back. The sound of running footsteps told him the original shooter was retreating, crashing through the bushes at the far end of the garden. Ibrahim risked a glance around the wall and saw a figure in dark clothing disappearing over the back fence. "Stay down," a voice shouted from the house. It was Kofi, his head of security, who must have arrived just in time. But as Ibrahim started to rise, he heard something that made his stomach drop. Multiple engines starting up in the distance. Not one getaway vehicle, but several. This wasn't a lone gunman. This was a coordinated team. Kofi appeared at the back door, assault rifle in hand, scanning the garden with professional intensity. "Sir, we need to get you inside immediately. This isn't over." As if to prove his point, the distant sound of helicopter rotors began to fill the air. Getting closer. Ibrahim stumbled toward the house, his legs shaky from adrenaline. "How many of them are there?"
"Unknown, sir, but they've been planning this. The phone lines to the house were cut 20 minutes ago. Your regular security detail was delayed by a staged car accident 3 blocks away. Someone wanted you isolated and vulnerable."
They reached the house just as the helicopter appeared over the tree line. It wasn't military, it was black, unmarked and hovering directly over Ibrahim's property like a predator circling wounded prey. Fatima met them at the door, her face pale with terror. "Who's trying to kill us?" Before anyone could answer, Kofi's radio crackled to life with urgent voices speaking in coded language. His expression grew darker with each transmission. "Sir, we have a problem. A big one." "What kind of problem?" Kofi hesitated, listening to another burst of radio chatter. "The attack on you was just the beginning. There are reports of simultaneous attacks on government buildings across the capital. The presidential palace is under siege. The military command center has gone dark. The helicopter above them began to descend toward their garden. Through the windows, Ibrahim could see armed figures preparing to fast rope down. "This isn't just an assassination attempt," Kofi said grimly. "This is a coup, and you're the primary target they need to eliminate to make it work." The sound of boots hitting the ground outside told them they were out of time. The hunter had brought reinforcements, and now Ibrahim's own home had become a battlefield. But the most shocking part was yet to come, because as the first masked figure kicked down the back door, Ibrahim recognized something that made his blood freeze. The tactical boots, the specific model of assault rifle, even the way they moved through the doorway. These weren't foreign mercenaries or rebel forces. These were his own soldiers. The soldiers who poured through Ibrahim's back door wore the uniform of the Presidential Guard, the elite unit sworn to protect him with their lives. Their faces were covered, but their movements were unmistakably familiar. Kofi raised his weapon, then froze in confusion. "These are our men." "No," Ibrahim said quietly, the terrible truth settling in. "They were our men." The lead soldier pulled off his mask, revealing Lieutenant Colonel Marcus Ouedraogo, a man Ibrahim had personally promoted just 6 months earlier, a man he had trusted with his family's safety. "Mr. President," Ouedraogo said with mock formality, "you're coming with us." "Marcus, what is this madness? I gave you everything: rank, responsibility, trust." Ouedraogo's laugh was bitter. "You gave me scraps while you consolidated power, while you made promises to the people that you couldn't keep. The country is falling apart, and you're playing in your garden." More soldiers filled the room, their weapons trained on Ibrahim and his family. These were faces he recognized, men he had eaten with, shared strategies with, men whose families he knew by name. Kofi still held his rifle, but he was outnumbered 6-1. His eyes met Ibrahim's, asking a silent question: "Should I fight?" Ibrahim gave an almost imperceptible shake of his head. "Not with Fatima in the room, not with civilians who could be caught in crossfire." "The helicopter is waiting," Ouedraogo continued. "You're going to make a public statement announcing your resignation. You're going to transfer power peacefully to the Military Council for National Salvation. And if I refuse?" Ouedraogo's expression hardened. "Your wife becomes a widow, your children become orphans, your legacy becomes a cautionary tale about leaders who don't know when to step aside." The radio on one of the soldiers crackled. "Alpha Team, what's your status?" "We have crowds gathering at the palace. The timeline is moving up." "Copy that," Ouedraogo responded. "Package is secure. Moving to extraction point now." But as they prepared to move Ibrahim toward the helicopter, Kofi's radio suddenly burst to life with a different voice, one that made everyone in the room freeze. "All loyal units, this is General Ouedraogo. The coup attempt has failed. Repeat, the coup has failed. All units supporting the illegal action are ordered to stand down immediately." Ouedraogo's face went white. "That's impossible. Ouedraogo was supposed to be neutralized." The voice continued. "Colonel Ouedraogo and his conspirators are to be arrested on sight. Any harm to the president will be considered an act of war against the Republic." The soldiers looked at each other uncertainly. Their confidence was cracking. This wasn't going according to plan. "It's a trick," Ouedraogo snapped at his men. "Ouedraogo is already dead. Someone's playing old recordings." But doubt had entered the room like poison gas. The soldiers' weapons were no longer steady. Their eyes darted between each other, looking for signs of weakness, for the first one to break ranks. That's when the house phone rang. It was an old landline that Fatima kept in the kitchen, one that the conspirators apparently didn't know about. The ringing seemed impossibly loud in the tense silence. Ouedraogo gestured for one of his soldiers to answer it. The man picked up the receiver cautiously. "It's for you, sir," he said to Ibrahim, his voice uncertain. It's General Ouedraogo. He says he's calling from the presidential palace. He says the palace is secure and he's sending backup." Ouedraogo grabbed the phone. "This is impossible. You're supposed to be..." His face went pale as he listened to the voice on the other end. Whatever he was hearing was not what he expected. Outside, the sound of approaching vehicles grew louder, but these weren't more conspirators. These were sirens. Police sirens. Military sirens. The coup was indeed failing, but that created a new problem. Desperate conspirators with nothing left to lose were the most dangerous kind, and Ibrahim realized that his greatest danger might not be from the original plan, but from whatever Ouedraogo decided to do now that everything was falling apart. Ouedraogo slammed the phone down, his composure completely shattered. The sound of approaching sirens was getting closer, and his soldiers were looking at him with growing panic. "Sir, what are our orders?" one of them asked, his voice shaking. "Shut up. Let me think." But Ibrahim could see that Ouedraogo was past rational thought. The colonel's eyes had the wild look of a cornered animal. This was when men like him became most dangerous, when they realized they had nothing left to lose. "There's still a way out of this," Ouedraogo said suddenly, his voice taking on a manic edge. "If we can't have a clean transition, we'll have martyrdom instead." Ibrahim felt ice form in his stomach. "Marcus, don't do something you can't take back." "Take back?" Ouedraogo laughed. "There's no taking back treason. You know what they do to coup plotters. But if you die here, today, you become a symbol. The people will remember you as the president who was murdered by foreign agents, not the one who failed them." "Foreign agents? That's what the story will be. Unknown mercenaries killed you during a home invasion. Very tragic. Very convenient for whoever comes to power next." One of the soldiers, a young sergeant named Thomas, lowered his weapon. "Sir, this wasn't the plan. We weren't supposed to hurt anyone. You said this would be bloodless." "Plans change, Sergeant." "My family knows I'm here," Thomas said desperately. "If the president dies, they'll know I was involved. My wife, my children. Then you should have thought of that before you joined us." The sirens were very close now. Through the window, Ibrahim could see the first police vehicles turning onto his street. But Ouedraogo seemed beyond caring about escape routes. That's when Kofi made his move. The security chief had been slowly shifting position during the conversation, using the distraction to inch closer to the nearest soldier. Now he lunged forward, grabbing the man's rifle and spinning him around as a human shield. "Everyone drop your weapons." The room exploded into chaos. Soldiers spun around, trying to get clear shots at Kofi without hitting their comrade. Fatima screamed and dove behind the kitchen counter. Ibrahim threw himself sideways just as gunfire erupted. But the shooting stopped almost immediately because something else had captured everyone's attention. The front door had been kicked open, and more soldiers were pouring in. But these weren't conspirators. These wore different insignia, and their weapons were trained on Ouedraogo's men. "Drop your weapons. This is General Ouedraogo's personal guard." Ouedraogo spun around, his face contorting with rage and disbelief. Did you really think you were the only one with inside information?" said a familiar voice from the doorway. General Ouedraogo himself stepped into the room, flanked by loyal troops, but he wasn't looking at Ouedraogo with the expression of a man who had just foiled a coup attempt. He was smiling. "Marcus, you played your part perfectly, almost too perfectly." Ibrahim felt the world tilt around him. "What?" Ouedraogo turned to Ibrahim with the same cold smile. "Mr. President, allow me to explain. Colonel Ouedraogo here believed he was leading a coup. He gathered conspirators, made plans, recruited soldiers. He even believed he was acting on his own initiative." "You used me," Ouedraogo whispered, the truth dawning in his eyes. "I needed someone to take the blame, someone whose hands would be dirty while mine remained clean. You provided the perfect cover for the real operation." The general's troops had Ouedraogo's confused soldiers surrounded now. Some were surrendering, others were backing toward the windows, looking for escape routes that no longer existed. "You see, Mr. President," Ouedraogo continued, "a failed coup attempt creates opportunities. It allows for emergency powers, it justifies restructuring, and it eliminates potential opposition under the aegis of national security." Ibrahim understood with growing horror. There had been no failed coup. There had been a successful one, just not the one anyone expected. The man he had trusted to stop the betrayal had orchestrated it from the beginning. But General Ouedraogo had made one crucial mistake. He had underestimated just how many people were playing games within games. Because at that moment, Kofi smiled for the first time since the shooting started. "General," Kofi said calmly, still holding his human shield. "You might want to check your communications." Ouedraogo frowned. "What are you talking about? Your coup was very well planned. Except for one small detail, you assumed I was just a security chief doing my job. You never asked who I really work for." The general's expression shifted from confidence to uncertainty. "You work for the president." "I work for the Republic," Kofi corrected, "and sometimes that means protecting the president from people who would harm it. Sometimes it means protecting the Republic from people who would destabilize it." Kofi's radio crackled to life again, but this time the voice was different, clearer, more authoritative. "Operation Lighthouse is complete. All conspirators have been identified and are being detained. General Ouedraogo, you are surrounded." Ouedraogo grabbed his own radio. "Command, this is General Ouedraogo. Respond." Static. "Base, respond immediately." More static. Through the windows, Ibrahim could see that the vehicles surrounding his house weren't just police and military. There were unmarked vans, communications trucks, and personnel in civilian clothes with military bearing. "Who are you people?" Ouedraogo demanded, the pieces finally coming together in his mind. Kofi's smile widened. "We're the people who watch the watchers. The ones who make sure that coups don't succeed, even when they're disguised as counter-coups." Ibrahim stared at his security chief with new eyes. "How long have you known?" "About Ouedraogo's conspiracy." 3 weeks. "About Ouedraogo's real plan." 6 months. "About the broader network trying to destabilize West African democracies." 2 years. The room had gone completely quiet except for the radio chatter from outside. Even the conspirators seemed mesmerized by the revelation that they had all been pawns in someone else's game. "You let this happen," Ibrahim said, his voice tight with controlled anger. "You let them get close enough to kill me. We needed them to reveal the full network. Arresting Ouedraogo alone would have left Ouedraogo free to try again with different pawns. We needed them both to show their hands. And if they had succeeded in killing me..." Kofi's expression grew serious. "That was never going to happen, sir. You were never in real danger. Someone shot at me. Someone shot near you. The sniper in the garden was one of ours. The bullets were meant to drive you to cover and create the appearance of a real assassination attempt. We needed the conspirators to believe their end was working." Ibrahim felt like the ground was shifting beneath his feet. Nothing had been real. The terror, the betrayal, the desperate fight for survival, all of it had been theater.
The phone call from Ouedraogo earlier?
Also scripted. We needed Ouedraogo to panic and reveal his true intentions. A calm, professional soldier following orders is very different from a desperate man willing to commit murder. Ouedraogo was staring at Kofi with growing recognition. "You're not just security, you're intelligence. Foreign intelligence. Does it matter at this point?" But Ibrahim realized it did matter. Because if Kofi was foreign intelligence, then this entire operation, the coup, the counter-coup, the elaborate deception, wasn't just about protecting him or preserving democracy in Burkina Faso. It was about something much bigger. And as if reading his thoughts, Kofi's radio came alive with a new voice. One speaking in accented English. "Package is secure, subjects have been identified. Begin phase 2 of the regional operation." Regional operation. Ibrahim looked at the man he had trusted with his life and realized that the biggest revelation was still to come. "Regional operation?" Ibrahim repeated, his voice barely a whisper. Kofi set down his weapon and straightened his posture. When he spoke again, his accent had changed subtly, less local, more international. "Mr. President, what you've experienced today was a test, not just of your security or your government's stability, but of the entire regional defense network." "What regional defense network?" "The one that's been operating quietly for the past 3 years. The one designed to prevent exactly this kind of destabilization from succeeding anywhere in West Africa." Through the windows, Ibrahim could see more vehicles arriving. These weren't local police or military. The license plates were diplomatic, and the personnel moving with quiet efficiency around his property had the bearing of international operatives. Ouedraogo, Kofi continued, was being funded by a network that spans multiple countries. Mining interests, arms dealers, political destabilizers, all working together to create chaos that they could profit from. The general's face had gone pale. "You can't prove any of that." We don't need to prove it in court, General. We just need to stop it from happening. A new figure appeared in the doorway, a woman in her 50s with silver hair and the unmistakable bearing of someone accustomed to authority. She spoke with a crisp French accent. Gentlemen, I apologize for the theatrics, but it was necessary to flush out the entire network. Ibrahim recognized her immediately, though he had only seen her in news reports. Commissioner Dubois, European Union External Intelligence. Among other roles, yes. Mr. President, your country was chosen as a testing ground for a new kind of destabilization campaign, one that uses local grievances and legitimate political concerns as cover for foreign manipulation. Ouedraogo laughed bitterly. So my concerns about the country's problems weren't real. Your concerns were absolutely real, Colonel. That's what made you such a perfect target for manipulation. The people funding your operation don't care about Burkina Faso's problems, they profit from them. She gestured to an aide, who began setting up a laptop and projection system on Ibrahim's dining room table. What you're about to see is the scope of what we've uncovered. The screen lit up with a map of West Africa, covered with connecting lines, photographs and data points. Ibrahim recognized some of the faces: politicians, military officers, businessmen from across the region. Similar operations were planned for Mali, Niger, Côte d'Ivoire, and Ghana, all scheduled within a 6-month window. All designed to create a cascade of instability that would justify international intervention and resource extraction. Ouedraogo was staring at the screen with recognition dawning in his eyes. The mining contracts, the port development deals, they were all connected. Now you understand. Your coup wasn't about domestic politics. It was about creating conditions for a new form of colonialism, one that operates through manufactured chaos rather than direct occupation. Ibrahim felt sick. And I was just bait? Commissioner Dubois turned to him with something that might have been sympathy. You were the catalyst, Mr. President. Your government's anti-corruption efforts and democratic reforms made you a target, but they also made you the perfect person to help us expose the network. By nearly getting me killed, by creating conditions where the conspirators felt confident enough to reveal their true scope and connections, we've now identified and disrupted cells in 12 countries. Funding sources have been frozen, weapons shipments intercepted, and key operatives arrested. The sound of helicopters overhead was growing louder. Through the window, Ibrahim could see aircraft with multiple national markings landing in the field behind his house. What happens now? He asked. Kofi, or whoever he really was, smiled. Now, Mr. President, you'll go back to running your country. With much better security, I assure you. And all of them, Ibrahim gestured to the conspirators, who were being processed by the international team. They'll face justice. But more importantly, the network they were part of has been crippled. It will be years before anyone attempts something like this again. Commissioner Dubois was packing up her equipment. Mr. President, what happened here today will remain classified for obvious reasons. Officially, you foiled a coup attempt by vigilant security and loyal forces. What about the truth? The truth is that democracy survived. Sometimes that's enough. As the international operatives began filing out of his house, Ibrahim realized that the most shocking revelation was yet to come. Because Fatima, who had been silent throughout the entire confrontation, finally spoke. Ibrahim, she said quietly, we need to talk. Ibrahim turned to his wife, expecting to see the shaken, terrified woman who had hidden behind the kitchen counter during the gunfight. Instead, Fatima's posture had changed. Her hands were steady, her eyes clear and calculating. Fatima? She was looking at Commissioner Dubois with recognition. Not the recognition of someone seeing a stranger from news reports, but the recognition of someone greeting an old colleague. Hello, Marie, Fatima said in perfect French. It's been a long time. The commissioner smiled. Hello, Fatima. You played your part perfectly. Ibrahim felt the world tilt again. Your part. Fatima turned to him with eyes full of sorrow and something else. Professional resignation. Ibrahim, I need you to understand something. I love you. I have always loved you, but I also have responsibilities that existed long before we met. What kind of responsibilities? The kind that involve making sure that people like you, good people, democratic leaders, Don't get killed by people who profit from chaos. The room had gone quiet again. Even the conspirators were staring at this new revelation. Kofi was nodding as if this was the most natural thing in the world. How long? Ibrahim asked. I've been monitoring threats to West African democracy for 15 years. I've been your wife for 8 of those years. Both roles are real, Ibrahim. Both matter to me. Ibrahim sank into a chair, overwhelmed. So our entire marriage. Our marriage is real, Fatima said firmly. The love is real. The family we've built is real. But yes, my assignment initially was to get close to emerging democratic leaders who might need pattern. Assignment from whom? Commissioner Dubois answered. A consortium of international organizations committed to preventing the kind of destabilization we've seen across Africa and the Middle East. Sometimes the best protection is intimate protection. How many others? Ibrahim asked. How many other leaders have wives who are actually intelligence operatives? That's classified, Fatima said gently. But you're not alone in this, Ibrahim. Democracy has more protectors than you know. The irony was overwhelming. He had spent the day thinking he was being betrayed by everyone around him, only to discover that everyone around him had been protecting him, in ways he never could have imagined. The children, he asked quietly. Are your children? Are children? This doesn't change that. Kofi was checking his watch. Sir, we need to prepare for the press conference. The official story needs to be established before rumors start spreading. What official story? Vigilant security forces detected and foiled a coup attempt. Several conspirators are in custody. Democracy prevailed. You're a hero who stood firm against enemies of the state. Ibrahim looked around his destroyed kitchen, at the bullet holes in his garden wall, at the faces of men he had trusted, who had betrayed him, and at the faces of people he had never suspected, who had been protecting him all along. What if I don't want to be a hero? What if I just want to be a man who can water his garden without wondering who's watching? Fatima took his hand. That's not the world we live in anymore, my love. Maybe it never was, but the alternative to people like us doing jobs like this is chaos. Real chaos, not the manufactured kind. Commissioner Dubois was putting on her coat. Mr. President, in 6 months you'll receive an invitation to a conference in Geneva. Economic development, regional cooperation. The usual diplomatic language. Accept it. There are things you'll need to know about what comes next. What comes next? The network we disrupted today was just one tentacle. The real work of protecting democracy is just beginning. As the international team finished packing up their equipment and the conspirators were led away, Ibrahim found himself alone with Fatima in their destroyed kitchen. So what now? He asked. Now we clean up the kitchen. We replant the garden. We explain to the children why there are strange people in the house. We go back to being a family. A family with secrets. A family that's alive because of those secrets. Ibrahim looked out at his garden, where crews were already working to repair the damage and remove evidence of the international operation. By tomorrow it would look like nothing had happened except a minor security incident. But he would know the truth. He would know that his quiet garden had been the center of an international chess game. He would know that his morning routine of watering plants had been watched and protected by networks he never knew existed. And he would know that sometimes the most shocking truth of all is discovering that the world is far more complex, far more connected, and far more carefully managed than it appears on the surface. The assassination attempt on Ibrahim Traoré in his garden had failed. But what happened next, the revelation of layers upon layers of protection, manipulation, and international cooperation, would indeed shock anyone who thought they understood how really works in the modern world. As he picked up his watering can to tend to his surviving tomato plants, Ibrahim realized that some secrets once learned change everything. Even the simple act of watering a garden.